Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, A Little Bit of Everything with Erin. Today we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to make your own beached theme tumbler using epoxy and acrylic paints. The first thing you're going to want to do is get your cup and you want to spray paint it white. If it is not white already, we're going to be adding a lot of different colors, so the white will really help make sure that those colors bounce off that cup correctly. So I'm going to go take that outside and paint it, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, so I've mixed a bunch of epoxy. I've put it into 5 separate cups. Now we're going to add our paint. I'm going to start with white. I don't need a lot of white, so that one has very little epoxy in it. You do want to be mindful when you're adding acrylic paints to epoxy. They don't really like each other too much. If you add too much, it will clump up and your epoxy will not harden. My advice is to add a little bit at a time. If you feel that your color is still translucent, you can add a little more. The next is the sand color, and that is going to be this tan color. And I will say that in each one I did not add enough acrylic paint, which, like I just said, is totally fine. So I will be adding a little more paint to each one of these here in a little bit. But like I said, you don't want it to clump, so adding a little bit at a time is what works best with the acrylic and epoxy method. Just to give our sand a little extra oomph, I'm taking a little bit of gold fine glitter and I'm adding that as well. The next cup that we're going to do is going to be this tealy color. And same thing, we're just going to slowly add that in. If we need more, we'll add it later on. Next, we want a nice blue, not too dark. The darkest blue is what we're going to use last. And we'll just add that to the epoxy and mix like we did on the other ones. And our final is going to be the darkest blue you can find. This is going to help accent some of the water, so you don't need a lot of epoxy in this cup either. So the white and the darkest blue, you don't need a lot of. So I'm going to start with the sand, which is going to be the bottom of the cup, and I found, and as you can see right there, it looked a little bit translucent for me. We really want to cover that white paint of the cup up. So I'm going to slowly start adding in more of that tan colored paint until I can get it to where it's not translucent and it's actually more of the brown color. And we're just going to continue to add that onto the cup. You don't really have to make it perfect because the water is going to kind of crash over the sand. It doesn't have to be a perfect line because sand is sand. You just want to get it on the bottom half of the cup. Once you're happy with the sand, you'll move on to the sky. I took the darker blue, not the super dark blue, but the darker of the other two blues, and I'm using that as my sky. Again, you can just lay this on. It does not have to be perfect because this blue will meet that teal colored blue for the ocean. Once you have that on, you want to take your lighter blue there and just add it right into the middle. You can kind of overlap the sky and the sand if you have to. Again, this does not have to be perfect. Each cup is going to look different. The end result will always be amazing. Now I'm going to take the deepest blue we made and I'm just going to flick that on with the toothpick or the spatula, whatever you're using. In my case, it's a craft stick. And this is just to kind of help make waves and different definition in the ocean. And you want to do the same thing with the white. The white will help make if you ever look at the ocean, how the crash comes at the top of that wave is so white. And again, I'm adding a little more white because it was a little bit too translucent for me. We really want that white to kind of pop. And again, just reiterating what I keep saying, it can go over the sand. Don't worry about it. I'm adding a little bit here and there in the darker blue for the sky to get a couple of little clouds up there. And you're just going to continue to add the white and then the deep blue and then the white and then the deep blue until you're kind of happy with how it's looking. There's no right or wrong reason. It's going to come out the way it's going to come out, and it's going to be perfect at the end. Okay, so at this point I decided I was pretty much going to leave it alone. I might add a little bit of blue or white here or there, but I'm going to let the tumbler do its thing. I'm going to let it spin and just let the epoxy flow and see what happens. Shocking, I know, I had some epoxy left in a couple of the cups, so I took out my circular mold and I figured making a little stand for the cup would be fun too, so that I'm just adding any of the extra epoxy I have to the round mold so that we can save it and use it for something. Alright, it's been about 8 hours. The cup is dry, so I've cut out some birds. I cut out the saying, "Take me to the ocean." This is from craftbundles.com. Use the code Erin20 and save 20% off whenever you shop on their site. I'm going to use contact paper that I pick up at Walmart in the kitchen section to transfer most of this over. I also have a palm tree. That's what I'm going to move over to the cup first. Again, just using that same piece of contact paper, I'm just going to use that to transfer over the saying onto the cup. Now we have all of our vinyl on. I do buy my vinyl from vinylexpressions.com. Links will be down in the description box below. I'm going to add this to my Tumbler spinner here. I do have a football that I picked up at Walgreens on the end of that. I do use a silicone mat underneath. That way when the epoxy that falls dries up, I can just peel it right off and throw it in the trash. So I've mixed my epoxy for the final layer to clear coat the decals. I did put a little bit to the side, which I'm going to add more white acrylic paint to. And this is so I can get some clouds and some, I don't know, the mist from the ocean to kind of come up over the decals as well. I think it just gives it a really cool effect, and you'll see that in the photos on the end. Alright, so we'll just go ahead and start by adding our clear epoxy. We're just going to go ahead and layer that like we normally would all over the cup. Make sure that all the decals are sealed in there nicely. Don't forget, if you did do the bottom of the cup, to make sure you put epoxy down there as well. I do see a few little air bubbles, so I'm going to go ahead and take my heat gun and just kind of hit those up so that they pop and that my epoxy is not having air bubbles in it and looks like nice glass when it's all done. Now I'm just going to take that white, and like we did earlier with the craft stick, just add a couple of strips here and there in the water and again in the sky to make a couple little clouds. And I just think the effect of this over the black vinyl was very cool, and it just made a different look to what I've seen most beach cups look like. And I know right now it looks like big blobs of white paint, but as the tumbler continues to move and the epoxy is moving, it's going to fade out and look very cloud and mist-like. And that right here, you can kind of see it already kind of pulling and misting, and it just has a really cool effect. I did have a little extra of just the white, so I went ahead and laid that on top of the epoxy from earlier. Alright guys, it's the next day. The final layer of epoxy is nice and dry. I'm just going to go ahead and spin the cup a little bit here so that you guys can kind of see. I'll have better pictures at the end of the video, of course. Alright guys, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment down below. I do try to answer those right away. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my page. If you hit Little Crafty Mama down there in the corner, she'll help you subscribe even faster. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Share it if you want to. That really does help me out. And if you hit that bell, you'll get notifications anytime I post new videos. Now I do have to sand this a little bit, but I think it came out super cute. Be a nice little coaster for our beach themed cup. Alright guys, until next time, happy crafting!